So, I got to play Deus Ex Mankind Divided over at E3 2016. I got a lot of hands-on time with the game, actually a combined total of probably about 2 hours, to be completely honest with you. Their E3 demo was an entire stage set in Dubai, and was taking place on multiple platforms. I played it first on Xbox One, and I wasn't really satisfied with the version I had played, right? So I went back, I stood in line, and played it again on the PC, and it kind of changed my whole perspective of the game. So I'm gonna give you guys my impressions of what I played, what I thought about the game, and move on from there. So one thing I do want to just put right out in front here is that they pretty much fixed the whole combat that was wrong with Deus Ex Human Revolution. You guys remember in Human Revolution, if you tried to go the combat route, and the only way you could succeed at it was if you used a mouse and keyboard. If you're using control, the aiming was slow, it wasn't that responsive, the shooting mechanics weren't really that good, and it didn't help that the game had a very brutal health system where it was very challenging, and so even if you got hit a couple times, you would almost die instantly. Well, that's pretty much all fixed with Deus Ex Mankind Divided. That's not to say the game is easier, it's just to say that it's much more satisfying for those of you who like combat to go in there and go in guns blazing rather than go in through stealth. Now, my first demo I did play through completely stealth-like, and it's still the same great stealth system that you knew from Human Revolution. It's pretty much been refined a little bit. You have a different set of controls, and then you also have enemies that sort of react to different things and where you are. So the AI is much smarter, they move around, they talk to one another, and you can now do cover takedowns this time. So if you're behind cover, you can now pull someone, do a takedown, and pull someone behind your cover system, rather than before, which you had to leave cover, go up to them, punch them in the face, and then drag the body. So that's much more useful this time around. The overall shooting mechanics feel really nice. It's not perfect, right? It's not like you're gonna play this game like you're playing Wolfenstein or something like that. But they're done really well, and if even using an Xbox One gamepad, I was actually really surprised and really pleased with how the shooting handled. Now, let's talk about the versions I played, alright? I played it first on Xbox One. The reason I wasn't that satisfied with that version was because the game ran at like 25 frames per second. It was not that great, very, very noticeable, and it actually made combat very difficult to do in that version. So that's kind of why I went back in line to play the PC version. I didn't even know they had the PC version on display, to be honest with you. I actually wanted to get the PS4 version to see how that compared, but it's not like you can choose your station. Once someone was done with the demo, they left, and you basically got to take their spot. And so I played it on PC, and this time around, max settings with 50 to 60 frames per second, it was so much more satisfying to play the game. And the higher frame rate really helped this game, really improved it, the way it felt, and also the shooting mechanics were just really well done and things like that. So it was just really freaking cool. Visually, the game looks pretty good, alright? There's a lot of graphical options, much more than we had in Human Revolution on PC. You actually have super sampling in this. Adam Jensen has pure hair, which is the upgraded tress effects that was used first in Tomb Raider 2013 on PC. So, and it's done really nice, because as you're taking cover, you'll see his hair is kind of reacting to, the breeze going on. And his hair was something that was very ugly, to say the least, in the first game. It was like a background, and you had these, it just looked really bad. So that's not the case anymore. He's much more lifelike, and the hair reacts dynamically to the environment depending on the weather situation and things like that. So it actually works pretty well. Now, the cutscenes are of different quality than the in-game renders, just like the first game, to be honest. In fact, I think it's I don't know why it's like this with Eidos Montreal, but the cutscenes seem to look slightly worse than your actual in-game engine. And I don't know why they just don't, at this point, render all the cutscenes, in-engine, during live in-game, rather than just have a CGI version just kind of paste in there. They try to actually play it off, which is pretty interesting, because I noticed I was playing on PC. I was watching a cutscene, and the cutscenes are stuck at 30 frames per second. And then I had a dialogue option. I had a choice to go in lethal or non-lethal. They gave you that same choice in Human Revolution. And when it switched to, you know, that option, it was very jarring because it's like 30 frames per second, and then you see the frame rate just jump up, and the assets of the game start to change. So that is something to know. I think the overall graphics actually looked really nice. I was pretty much maxing the game out at this point. And it looked really good, to be honest. There's all these different options that more so than we had in Human Revolution, and I think Nixies is a very good developer at porting games from console to PC. You know, they handled the Rise of the Tomb Raider and the Tomb Raider 2013 port, as well as the original Deus Ex Human Revolution port. And so this time around, I think the PC version is very well done. And I was playing on an R9 390 at 1920 by 1200. All right, that arbitrary 16 by 10 resolution from ages ago on a crappy Dell monitor. But so it was a pretty decent rig, nothing spectacular, and the game was running actually pretty well. And so I think those of you guys with mid-range graphics cards shouldn't really have a problem maxing the game out, provided that it's optimized and things like that. Now, the overall control scheme, they did change it this time around. Actually, your left stick, you click it in to actually take cover this time around, and your left trigger, instead of taking cover like it was in the first game, is now your aim down the sight button. So you see that they changed the controls a little bit to make way for a better, more fluid combat experience. Now, I originally didn't think I was going to like this. In fact, there's a control scheme when you first start the demo that says if you want to use the exact Human Revolution control scheme, you can. There's an option to select Human Revolution. But I played it first using the Human Revolution controls, and then I said to myself, you know, I'm going to try out the new controls. And I actually ended up liking the new control scheme a lot better than the Human Revolution control scheme. The cover this time around works really well, and you know, keep in mind it's a sticky cover system. You're clicking in the left stick and it goes to third person, so you still have your third person cover system. But this time around you can move around the environment a little bit more, and now enemies kind of takedowns kind of react to the cover dynamically this time around. So instead of you having to leave cover, then go around the box to assassinate someone, if someone's just standing on the box like this and you take cover behind them, you can pull them over it and assassinate them, then do it that way. There's also a lot of hidden options. I mean, I had a side objective and then I had a main objective. All right, the main objective was to get to this balcony, this overlooking point, and my side objective was to disable this antenna that was causing interference for our communications. And the levels are huge, right? They're much bigger and they're much more expansive than they were in Human Revolution this time around. There's a lot more paths, and you really have to look at your environment a lot more this time around to really see where you're going. So on my first playthrough, I was able to find the communication box pretty well, and it wasn't so challenging, but it did require me to go out of the way of the main path and just look around. And that's how you're supposed to play this game, really. You're supposed to look around, take different paths and things like that. And the levels are much more vertical as well. And so you can actually take cover from high up, you know, balconies on the roof, and you know, see all the enemies down there and skip through them entirely, or go ahead and assassinate each one of them and then pick up their loot. It's really up to you how you want to play this game, and it stays very true to the original Deus Ex in that respect. All right. Other than that, really my only complaints of the game were that on Xbox One, the version I played, it ran at like 25 frames per second. And when the game's coming out in August, you know, that's like 2 months away, it kind of concerns me. I hope that they're able to optimize the game and get it working at a full locked 30 frames per second for the console experience. And I did actually notice that on the PlayStation 4 version, because someone was playing it next to me, it looked a little bit smoother than what I was playing on the Xbox One. So I think they're just still working out their optimization code. To be honest, I do have confidence in them. You know, they really did deliver a very well optimized port with Deus Ex Human Revolution. It was just a really well made game across all versions, and so I really expect, you know, because they delayed the game like 6 months, so I do expect them to actually deliver a quality product. And to be honest, coming from Eidos Montreal, All their games typically run well, and I don't think that they're gonna, release a Deus Ex at 25 frames per second on Xbox One. I really don't. So overall, I was super excited. I mean, to be honest, I could have just sat there and just played the Xbox One demo and left, but I had so much fun, and the game was so awesome that I actually got back in line, waited another hour to play the demo on PC. Now, I also got to play the Deus Ex Breach briefly, which is a side mode. It's a separate mode entirely from the campaign, where it has more to do with multiplayer. You kind of have your leaderboards and kind of compare them and contrast, your stats with your friends. And your whole goal is, it's a different art style. It's all done with this triangular art style. And you're basically going into servers, hacking servers. I guess you're supposed to be like a virus, and you're killing all the defense. It's weird. It's like the hacking portion of Deus Ex, but done with an actual third person and first person exploration, like shooter type game. So I did play briefly of this, and it was on PC, and it was locked at 60. It's cool, I guess. It's not something I can see myself really getting into, because I just don't necessarily care. I'm playing Deus Ex for a great story and for a great gameplay experience. But for those who want a little bit more out of the game, and for those who want to compare and contrast their stats with their friends, I think this is actually a pretty interesting mode. I don't know how long it's going to last, to be honest. I played it for about 10-15 minutes, and to be honest, I wasn't really that compelled to play it anymore. So I think that when it does release, it could be fun if people really get into it, and if they keep, putting up content. And provided that the levels are challenging and varied, it could be really interesting. But other than that, I think it's the campaign, the main single-player story, is like where it's at with this game. And the graphics look good. The story was interesting. You have way more options than you did with Human Revolution. The levels are much more vertical. And finally, for those of you guys who love combat, and I can understand, because I personally have like really close friends of mine who just couldn't play Deus Ex Human Revolution because they don't like stealth. They like to go the combat route. And Human Revolution's combat system was just god-awful. It just sucked. The shooting mechanics were awful. You couldn't aim properly, and it just wasn't that well done. And they fixed that with Mankind Divided. You can now go in there and play it like an FPS if you really want to, provided it's still challenging. It's still challenging, but you do have a lot more augmentations this time around to really beef you up for combat situations. And we weren't able to use our upgrades yet, but they did give us the what's it called? It's the first one of the augmentations from the first game, where you can make explosives come out of your arms and into little balls and things like that. I forgot what it's called. So we had that, and then the Icarus landing system was unlocked from the start. I have no idea what augmentations are going to be unlocked from the start, because keep in mind, this is sort of a direct sequel from Human Revolution. It happens 2 years later, and you have the comic called Deus Ex something that kind of bridges the gap between the two games. So I don't know if they're going to have us keep our augmentations that we did from the first game, or if we're going to have some of the augmentations that we had from the first game, and then we're going to have to unlock some of them again like we did in the sequel. So we're going to have to see how that goes. But overall, Deus Ex is looking really awesome, and it's my second most anticipated game this year, following Mirror's Edge, and I was so thrilled to play it, and I walked away really happy and really feeling like this is a really big natural evolution of the series. This is everything I loved from Human Revolution on a much bigger scale. And for those of you guys who couldn't get into Human Revolution because of the combat system, they really did make an effort to make it work in this one, and it does actually work. So hope that clears some things up. Alright, if you guys have any more questions in the comments, you can leave them down below, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. But overall, Deus Ex gets a huge thumbs up for me. I cannot wait for that game to release, and looking forward to playing it, getting into this story, and it's going to be pretty awesome, alright? So I'll catch you guys later. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good one.